An evening journal of yesterday refers to a former mysterious disappearance from Mademoiselle Roget. It is well known that during the week of her absence from Leblanc's parfumerie, she was in the company of a young naval officer much noted for his debaucheries. A quarrel, it is supposed, providentially led her return home. We have the name of the Lothario in question, who was at present stationed in Paris, but for obvious reasons forbear to make public. Late Mercury, Tuesday morning, June 24th. An outrage of the most atrocious character was perpetrated near the city the day before yesterday. A gentleman with his wife and daughter engaged about dusk the services of 6 young men who were idly rowing a boat to and fro near the banks of the Seine. To convey him across the river. Upon reaching the opposite shore, the 3 passengers stepped out and had proceeded so far as to be beyond the view of the boat when the daughter discovered that she had left it in her parasol. She returned for it, was seized by the gang, carried out into the stream, gagged, brutally treated, and was taken finally to the shore at a point not far from that which she had originally entered the boat with her parents. The villains have escaped for the time, but the police are upon the trail, and some of them will soon be taken. Morning paper, June 25th. We have received 1 or 2 communications, the object of which is to fasten the crime of the late atrocity upon Manai. But as this gentleman has been fully exonerated by legal inquiry, and as the arguments of our several correspondents appear to be more zealous than profound, we do not think it advisable to make them public. Morning paper, June 28th. We have received several forcibly written communications, apparently from various sources, and which go far to render it a matter of certainty that the unfortunate Marie Roget has become a victim of the more numerous bands of blackguards which infest the vicinity of the city upon this Sunday. Our own opinion is decidedly in favor of this supposition. We shall endeavor to make room for some of these arguments hereafter. Evening paper, Tuesday, June 31st. On Monday, one of the bargemen connected with the revenue service saw an empty boat floating down the Seine. Sails were lying in the bottom of the boat. The bargeman towed up under the barge office. The next morning it was taken from thence without the knowledge of any officers. The rudder is now at the barge office. Les Diligence, Thursday, June 26th. Upon reading these various extracts, they not only seem to be irrelevant, but I could perceive no mode in which any of them could be brought to bear upon the matter at hand. I waited for some explanation from Dupont. It is not my present design, he said, to dwell upon the first or second of these extracts. I have copied them chiefly to show the extreme remissness of the police, who, as far as I can understand from the prefect, have not troubled themselves in any respect with an examination of the public naval officer alluded to. Yet it is mere folly to say that between this first and second disappearance of Marie there is no supposable connection. Let us admit the first elopement to have resulted in a quarrel between lovers, and the return home of the betrayed. We are not prepared to take view a second elopement if we know that an elopement has again taken place, as indicating that a renewal of the betrayer's advances, rather than as the result of the new proposals by a second individual. We are prepared to regard it as a making up of the amour, rather than as a commencement of the new one. The chances are 10 to 1 that he who had once eloped with Marie would again propose an elopement, rather than she to whom proposals of elopement have been made by one individual should have made them to her by another. And here, let me call to your attention the fact that the time elapsing between the one ascertained and the second supposed elopement is but a few months more than a general period of the cruises of our men of war. Had the lover been interrupted in his first villainy by the necessity of departure to sea, and had he seized the first moment of his return to renew the base designs not yet altogether accomplished, or not yet altogether accomplished by him, of all these things we know nothing. You will say, however, that in the second instance there was no elopement as imagined. Certainly not, but are we prepared to say there was not the frustrated design? Beyond St. Eustache and perhaps Beauvais, we find no recognized, no open, no honorable suits of Marie. Of no other is there anything said. Who then is the secret lover of whom the relatives, at least most of them, know nothing, but whom Marie meets upon the morning of Sunday, and who is deeply in her confidence? That she hesitates not to remain with him until the shades of the evening descend, amid the solitary groves of the Barrière du Roulette. Who is that secret lover, I ask, of whom at least most of the relatives know nothing? And what means the singular prophecy of Madame Roget? On the morning of Marie's departure, I fear that I shall never see Marie again. But if we cannot imagine Madame Roget privy to the design of elopement, may we not at least suppose this design entertained by the girl? Upon quitting home, she gave it to be understood that she was about to visit her aunt in the Rue des Drômes, and the St. Eustache was recalled to call for her at dark. Now, at first glance, this fact strongly militates against my suggestion, but let us reflect that she did meet some companion and proceed with him across the river, reaching the Barrière du Roulette at so late an hour as 3 o'clock in the afternoon is known. But in consenting so to accompany this individual for whatever purpose to her mother, known or unknown, she must have thought of her expressed intention when leaving home, and of the surprise and suspicion aroused in her bosom, of her finance, of her affianced suitor, St. Eustache, when calling for her at the hour appointed, and the Rue des Drômes, he should find that she had not been there, and when moreover, upon her returning to the pension with this alarming intelligence, he should become aware of her continued absence from home. She must have thought of these things, I say. She must have foreseen the chagrin of St. Eustache, the suspicion of it all. She could not have thought of returning to this very suspicion. To brave the suspicion, but the suspicion becomes a point of trivial importance to her if we suppose her not intending to return. We may imagine her thinking thus: I am to meet a certain person for the purpose of elopement, or for certain other purposes known only to myself. It is necessary that there be no chance of interruption. There must be sufficient time given to us to elude pursuit. I will give it to be understood that I shall visit and spend the day with my aunt at the Rue des Drômes. I will tell St. Eustache not to call for me until dark. In this way, my absence from home for the longest possible period, without causing suspicion or anxiety, will be accounted for, and I shall gain more time than in any other matter. If I bid St. Eustache to call for me at dark, he will be sure not to call before, but if I wholly neglect to bid him call, my time for escape will be diminished. since it will be expected that I return the earlier, and my absence will be the sooner excite anxiety. Now, if it were my design to return at all, if I had in contemplation merely a stroll with the individual in question, it would not be my policy to bid St. Eustache call, for calling he will be sure to ascertain that I have played him false, a fact of which I might keep him in forever in ignorance. By leaving home without notifying him of my intention, by returning before dark, and by then stating that I had been to visit my aunt in the Rue des Drômes, but as it is my design never to return, or not for some weeks, or not until certain concealments are effected, the gaining of time is the only point about which I need give myself any concern. You have observed in your notes that the most general opinion in relation to this sad affair is, and was from the first, that the girl had been the victim of a gang of blackguards. Now, popular opinion under certain conditions is not to be disregarded when arising of itself, when manifesting itself in a strictly spontaneous manner. We should look upon it as analogous with that intuition which is the idiosyncrasy of the individual man of genius. In 99 cases from 100, I would abide by this decision. But it is important that we find no palpable traces of suggestion. The opinion must be rigorously the public's own, and a distinction it is often exceedingly difficult to perceive and to maintain. In the present instance, it appears to me that this public opinion in respect to a gang has been superinduced by the collateral event which is detailed in the third of my extracts. All Paris is excited by the discovery of a corpse of Marie, a girl young, beautiful, and notorious. This corpse is found bearing marks of violence and floating in the river, but it is now made known that at the very period, or about the very period, in which it is supposed that the girl was assassinated, an outrage very similar in nature to that endured by the deceased, although less in extent, was perpetrated by a gang of young ruffians upon the person of a second young female. Is it wonderful that the one known atrocity should influence the popular judgment in regard to the other unknown? This judgment awaited direction, and the known outrage seems so opportunely to afford it. Marie, too, was found in the river, and upon this very river was this known outrage committed. The connection of the two events had about it so much of the palpable that the true wonder would have been a failure of the populace to appreciate and to seize it. But in fact, the one atrocity known to be so committed is, if anything, evidence that the other, committed at a time nearly coincident, was not so committed. It would have been a miracle indeed that if, while a gang of ruffians were perpetrating at a given locality the most unheard of wrong, there should have been another similar gang in a similar locality in the same city, under the same circumstances, with the same means and appliances, engaged in wrong of precisely the same aspect at precisely the same period of time. Yet in what, if not in this marvelous train of coincidence, does the accidentally suggested opinion of the populace call upon us to believe?